So basically, when I'm writing my book, how to spot a chicken hawk, I write it from the perspective that this is a fable. It's not a true story. And I try to incorporate the hero's journey as much as I can. So there's a small town called Scareville. This is where Scotty lives. This is his home. And his job is to be a scarecrow by day. And he sits on a post, him and his two buddies, Bubba and Phil, and they guard a farmer's field. And they try and protect the crops. And one day, Scotty decides that he has an epiphany and he wants to write a book. And of course, the crows show up and they're laughing at him and they're like, who would ever write a book? And they basically discourage him from trying to write a book. And his friends have never written a book, but they're intrigued by the idea of Scotty wanting to write a book, but they're also fearful as well because this is all they know, is how to be a scarecrow. So later that night, Scotty is at home and he's working away at home and he's sitting at the kitchen table and maybe he's getting ready to write a book, but he has no idea what his idea is. So all he's doing really is he's just staring at a blank piece of paper. And he wants a book. He wants to write a book, but there's nothing coming out. It's just nothing. So then when he actually does sit down to write, all of a sudden through his window there's a tap on the glass, and it's this little tiny, I don't know if I could draw it, but it's a little tiny dove. This dove asks to come in. Scotty lets him in, and the dove begins to instill wisdom on the beginnings of writing a book. And the dove actually introduces the idea to Scotty that if he sits down for a long enough period of time, even if he doesn't have an idea, the idea will eventually show up. But what he has to do is write. So the moral of that idea or that story is that even if you're not a writer, as long as you start writing, your idea will show up. It took me about 10 to 20,000 words to come up with this whole idea. Just writing, I was just writing nonsense. I wanted to write a book in 6 hours, so I just wrote for about 4 hours straight. And I think I wrote about 10, 15,000 words, and then all of a sudden this idea came to me. So in that idea, of course, is represented by an egg. So the egg is the idea. You have to protect the egg, because if you don't protect the idea, the egg can crack. Somebody can come by, like a bird can come by and steal it. How do you like those birds, eh? Doesn't that look wicked? The birds can actually come and steal it, or they can peck at it and crack that egg, which is your idea, thus ending your aspiration of writing a book. So this is just part one of me just breaking down my entire book. So yeah, so I don't know what to call this. I'll call this behind the scenes or something of how I came up with the idea of writing my book. But for now, this is just part one.